Welcome to the Biloxi City Council meeting Tuesday, February 5th, 2019. I would like to ask Reverend Henry McEnery of Our Lady of Fatima to come on up and start us off in a prayer. Would we all please stand?
Let us pause and let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come together this evening to continue to do the work entrusted to our care for the good of all in this community. We ask you this evening to bless our mayor and all of the councilmen, the councilwomen here. We pray that everything we do, we'll do for your greater honor and glory. Father, we thank you, for you have called us all to be your children, and you constantly surround us with signs of your love. We ask you now to open our hearts to this love and to make us aware of the fullness of your peace around us. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for having placed this confidence in us, for constantly challenging us to freedom, for teaching us not to be afraid, for forgiving us and showing us how to forgive one another, for calling us to build a community of faith, of love, and of service. Heavenly Father, we ask you now to open our hearts to your Spirit dwelling within this community, so that we might continue to listen to your call, so that we might continue to live lives of service and of love and of commitment, so that we might help proclaim justice and freedom in our land and in our community, and so that we might accept more fully your word and always grasp the mysterious depths of your love. And we ask these and all our prayers in faith through Christ our Lord. Amen.
All right, Mr. Lawrence, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Right, thank you, Reverend. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Need a motion on the agenda? Moved by Mr. Lawrence. Second by Dr. Tisdale. Any questions on the agenda? No questions. All in favor? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6-0. Motion carry. Mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I forget, please spread the travel card expense to the minutes. And I think I want to welcome everyone to the February meeting, and or the first of the February meeting, I guess. Second? First. March. Yeah, whatever the day is. It's been a long day. But I think we'll talk a little bit about the next site report will be the next go-around.
Okay.
We're talking with them about reaching a resolution. They need to confer back with their partners about terminating early. So we're still talking with them. We hope to have a resolution of that by the next meeting.
And really, you know, I think part of that would also to generate the numbers, the actual measurements and metrics that they've measured for us in order to gauge and what can we accomplish, what can we help raise this number, whether it's income or leakage or some of these other metrics that we're counting on in order to generate the retail and some of these other things that the focus of the contract was about. We did one other thing. I think we signed our life away today, $14 million bond issue, so that's on the way in the next few days, and we'll be putting that to good use. And that concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, we got departmental reports. Ms. Carol Campbell, give us a report on the tree committee.
All right. Okay, thanks. Okay, because I have laryngitis, my colleague Brian Lamar, Ward 7 representative, is going to read for me tonight. And I ask that y'all hold your questions till the end and I'll answer. And I apologize for the length. We're going to be doing these quarterly from now on. Okay, thanks.
Baseball's got pinch hitters. Now we've got pinch readers. So this is the Tree Committee report to the City Council, February 5th, 2019. This annual report is provided as a requirement of the Land Development Ordinance. whereby the tree committee is to determine compliance with replacement and establishment provisions during the terms of tree permits and report any perceived violations for follow-up. Accomplishments to date. The tree committee continues to meet monthly on the second Monday of each month at the Gulf Coast Community Design Studio at 769 Howard Avenue in Biloxi. Agenda and minutes are posted on the city website along with committee member contact information and useful resources. All tree committee meetings are open to the public with opportunity for public comment. The committee has established subcommittees for the following tasks: public relations and community outreach and education, and mitigation tracking. The committee meets on-site whenever necessary regarding tree permit applications that go to hearing, and has reviewed and provided recommendations regarding the following 7 projects during 2018 with a total of approximately 336 protected trees removed. I'll read a list of them. Blake Assisted Living Center on Pops Ferry, 35 protected trees. Cedar Lake Preliminary Plat 5, Cedar Crescent Subdivision, 15 trees. PJ's Coffee, the lot adjacent to Wells Fargo at the corner of Eisenhower and Pass, 15 trees. Nature's Trails Phase 2 between Wash Fayard Road and Lorraine Road in Woolmarket, 142 trees. Biloxi Beach RV Resort on Veterans, 100 trees. Savannah Estates Subdivision Phase 2, Savannah Estates Boulevard, 29 trees. Proposed Holiday Inn site on Highway 90 near intersection with Veterans west of White Pillars. Additionally, pedestrian overpass at World War II Memorial. No permit was applied for this in this case. However, the tree committee conducted a site visit with the city arborist and provided written recommendations to the city. The committee has established a Dropbox account for archival of cases, correspondence, and all official reports. The committee has purchased and reviewed the American National Standard, ANSI A300 standards for pruning, tree, shrub, and other woody plant management, standard practices, pruning, and tree pruning, the best management practices, second edition, and tree hazards, produced and published by Tree Care Industry Association Incorporated. The committee regularly sends representation to all Development Review Committee, Planning Commission, and some city council meetings, regardless of whether tree permits have been issued that would alert us to attend or not. This practice has led to an increased number of tree committee reviews. It is a developer's responsibility to review what is required of them under the LDO, but it appears that this oftentimes does not happen. In DRC, tree committee representatives support the city arborist to inform developers and their clients at the outset of the planning that tree mitigation is required by ordinance at a ratio of 3:1. By following this practice of communicating developers' obligations as early on as possible, we intend to ensure they plan and budget for tree protection and mitigation from the start of their process, while site plans are still flexible and investor contributions are still being negotiated. The committee established a process in June for tree committee review of all permits, whereby the city arborist forwards tree permit applications to the committee along with pictorial documentation. This process has often helped the tree committee to advocate for the city when citizens contact the committee over trees that they see being removed. Review of the tree permits provided to us have also tended to confirm that a majority of tree removals conducted under the city's oversight are justified. The committee has extensively reviewed the current land development ordinance as it relates to tree protection and drafted revisions to the tree committee section, tree permit section, and the tree permit application form. The tree committee has met with the director of community development and city arborist for feedback and input. Our next step will be to follow a course prescribed by the ordinance for review and codification. Revisions to the more detailed tree protection section would follow to align with these revisions once refined and approved. Proposed language addressed issues to, here's a list, provide an accurate permit and approval process diagram, bring greater clarity and consistency across all sections, define majestic trees and set up a process for their designation. Penalties, verbiage, and has been developed based on research of other southern cities in order to assign penalties that bear enough weight to be meaningful and are comparable to regional standards. Research revealed no penalties for tree permits are on record with the city of Biloxi as ever having been assessed through our municipal court. Simplify verbiage and eliminate confusing terms such as major and minor permits and specimen trees. Provide a more accountability regarding tree replacement and mitigation and tree protection, and provide list of mitigation sites and a list of native species to be used. And to provide more accountability regarding pruning standards that align with the ANSI A300 standards. The committee has developed an action tracking spreadsheet as an internal system to track issues and seek resolution regarding replacement and mitigation requirements and perceived violations. This spreadsheet is reviewed and updated each month during the regular tree committee meetings. This system allows the committee to stay on top of issues until they are resolved or clarification is received and our questions are answered, and to also track fulfillment of mitigation requirements. The committee conducts monthly windshield surveys to scan for tree issues and reports concerns to the city arborist. Citizens are now assisting with this effort, reporting to the tree committee, who in turn reports the issues back to the city arborist. The transparent practice of the committee receiving all the permits and pictorial documentation of trees permitted for removal has allowed some concerns to be dispelled. Citizens repeatedly have complained about utilities pruning, so in response, the tree committee is conducting a one-year study to pictorially document its effects. After speaking with Mississippi Power and reading their technical specifications, it was decided the tree committee should track for 1 year how some of these trees are recovering or not over time. Photographs were taken in August and early December. This study is in its 6th month. Compliance concerns. The tree committee is committed to compliance with the land development ordinance. These concerns include 1, mitigation. Unfortunately, the following sites have received their certificate of occupancy but have not conducted the following mitigation and are therefore in non-compliance. They are as follows: 1, Caterpillar Daycare, 9 or more trees. 2, Cedar Lake Circle K. B, the following sites are still in development process. The trees have been removed, but mitigation has not yet taken place, and landscape mitigation plans have not been provided. 1, Nature's Trail Phase 2. 2, Blake Assisted Living on Pops Ferry, Big Ridge Road. 3, Hilton Gardens Hotel on Highway 90 adjacent to the Santa Maria site. 4, La Quinta at the corner of Highway 90 and Hopkins. 5, Davis & Davis at Marcia Court People's Plaza northeast of 2598 Pass Road. 2 letters of conflict addressed to the mayor were delivered regarding planning commission decisions that did not uphold the land development ordinance mitigation requirements. 1, Nature's Trails. The developer's tree application was for the removal of 142 trees with an offer to mitigate with 50 live oak trees. This was approved by the planning commission. The tree committee submitted a letter of conflict to the administration which resulted in a decision requiring mitigation at a ratio of 1:1, which was an improvement but still not in compliance with the tree ordinance, which requires a mitigation of 3:1. In the letter of conflict, the tree committee requested a revised grading plan indicating that 2 trees especially worth saving would indeed be conserved. As the response did not address this question, we sent a follow-up letter to request confirmation, but to date we have not received a response from the mayor. For the public record, we are hereby requesting a response from the mayor to our follow-up letter. 2, Biloxi Beach RV Park. This was another case in which the developer's offer to mitigate at a ratio of 1:1 was approved at the planning commission and then contested by the tree committee with the mayor. To date, we have not received a response in our letter of conflict. For the public record, we are requesting a response from the mayor in this matter. By ordinance, tree mitigation reports are to be provided monthly to the tree committee and annually to the mayor. Quarterly reports may be more feasible, and this will be addressed in the revisions to the LDO. However, currently the reports are only provided when requested and not at irregular intervals, and not in report form, but through telephone communications with the chair, who records what is reported. The content of what this report should include have been provided and the tree committee by the tree committee to the city arborists. 12, stockpiling of materials and storage of large vehicles under tree canopies continues to be a problem in Biloxi. The contractors at Hilton Gardens have continually stockpiled building materials under trees and stored a work trailer under a tree canopy despite our repeated requests that they stop this. The city is not adhering to tree protection requirements. One example is the property on the corner of Seal Avenue and Highway 90. Construction materials are being stockpiled under the tree canopy. However, the tree committee requests have resulted in one case of tree protection being corrected at Bay Vista Fire Station, where the city removed stockpiled aggregate large vehicles and a large storage container from beneath tree canopy. Tree protection during construction. Though some progress has been made, the tree committee will persist in reporting practices that do not align with the LDO and that compromise tree health during construction. As of this writing, Treasure Bay continues to house bulldozers under the tree canopy north of the parking lot they are constructing. Tree protection fencing is absent from the trees at this site. A tree permit was issued in this case, but at this writing, the tree committee has not received a copy of it. 3, tree permit applications. Site plans, some progress has been made by the persistence of the tree committee, but vigilance must be maintained so that site plans presented to the DRC and Planning Commission are accurate and complete. 3 examples of incomplete site plans tree committee addressed in 2018 are the Biloxi Beach RV Resort on Veterans, proposed Holiday Insight on Highway 90, and the PJs at 2685 Pass Road. Standardization of tree permits and site plans is being addressed in the proposed of the revisions to the LDO. Public Works, the tree committee again requests adherence to the LDO, whereby Public Works is required to make application for tree permits. This will provide more communication and transparency to the public while demonstrating the tree's commitment to protecting our tree heritage. Examples, the new Keesler Gate, the sewerage updates on Highway 90 regarding root systems of trees, and the World War II Memorial. 4, tree hearing required. As a note, the removal of 5 or more protected trees always requires a public tree hearing according to the LDO. All tree species are protected except for pines, pecans, and popcorn trees. So moving forward. As we move forward, the City of Biloxi Tree Committee will be looking for ways to provide greater support to the city arborist as directed by the Director of Community Development to include the following: a comprehensive city beautification plan. Biloxi's economy is based in tourism. As a great southern city, Biloxi would greatly benefit from landscaping and beautification at interstate and highway interchanges, as well as along our city's roadways to provide visitors with a welcoming experience and to demonstrate our role as Mississippi's premier tourism destination. By ordinance, the committee is to advise city officials based on city beautification, but no parameters exist on the nature of this guidance. After a recent meeting of the tree committee officers with the Director of Community Development and city ordinance, our city arborist, the tree committee will provide a map of opportunities and will work to assist the city in securing funding for a more comprehensive beautification plan. Education. The tree committee agrees that the public education campaign should precede our eventual goal of enforcement of penalties. This may include professional workshops, social media outreach to the public, and more. Land development ordinance. The tree committee will persist with the process of making necessary revisions to the land development ordinance. Mitigation tracking. The tree committee will persist in efforts toward upholding the land development ordinance in terms of replacement and mitigation requirements, and will lend support and collaborate with the city to develop a feasible system that works for everyone. Quarterly reporting to the city council. Going forward, the tree committee will report information on compliance to the city council quarterly. If you have any questions, I'll call Ms. Campbell up.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions from the council?
I do. I
Okay, Mr.
definitely
Glavin.
do. Thank you, Mr. President. The question I have, and this is for Director Creel, I'm listening to the report. It sounds like there's a minimal amount of progress, but there sounds like there's some angst with the tree committee that there is some conflict with the LDO. Is that what you believe to be true, or how does that get resolved, or how does that get missed? or what else are we missing here? Because this is designed as a little bit of some feedback to ensure that we're protecting trees and moving forward in the right direction. Please, please. And this is not criticism, it's just to obtain information based on the report that we just heard.
The tree committee was created as an advisory board, but has kind of shifted to more of a police authority than advisory. We have made some progress. We do have 2 members that attend the DRC meetings and have input into what's being developed, making their recommendations and working closely with Eric Nolan, the city arborist. We actually established, I'm talking about the department, actually established a policy where we send the tree committee a report on every tree that is issued a permit, every one that's removed. That was not happening, and we established that policy. So that's taken a lot out of it. We do believe there are some problems with the new ordinance that was written, and a lot of it has to do with subdivision developments. In the previous ordinance, subdivisions were not included in the tree protection area because subdivisions are such a massive development project where the developer has to go in and actually reshape the topo for the entire area in order for the property to drain correctly. It's a situation where you have to add fill, which is dangerous to a lot of trees. There are situations where you have some mature trees on the property where you can work around those and you can design your drainage around those without overloading the root system with fill that would endanger it. So we don't believe that adding subdivisions to the ordinance was a correct procedure. I mean, it basically would kill subdivision development in the city to do that. The ordinance does not call for the committee to provide the reports to the council. It requires the director to provide those reports, which we'll be happy to do. We'll be happy to provide you with that information. Eric Nolan has established a inventory of trees. A lot of the things that we heard here tonight are things that are actually charged to the city arborist to do. The requirements for the tree committee is that they serve as advisory in the committee meetings where we're reviewing projects and then make recommendations about alternative ways to save as many trees on the property as possible, to find that balance between development and tree protection, not to go to one extreme or the other. They're also charged with establishing potential sites for reforestation. That's one of the things that was delegated to the tree committee. They are supposed to be picking sites, and they're doing that. But we had a meeting, very good meeting, and we didn't agree on everything, but we were able to find some common ground on some of these issues. Now, any recommendations, and we had asked the tree committee not to come to the council yet because any changes to the ordinance are going to require a public hearing before the planning commission because it's a text amendment. So we were hoping that they would honor that request and come to the planning commission with the recommendations and let the planning commission make those decisions about what was valid and let us make our arguments as well and then make the presentation to the city council based on that. The tree committee does have the right to come to the planning commission meetings, and they have. They've come to some of the meetings with recommendations about alternative ways to save a few more of the trees on the property. But the planning commission, serving in their capacity as the tree commission, who ultimately make the decisions and then make those recommendations, are the ones that make the decision about whether or not it's a valid request to remove trees or not a valid request. and then their recommendation comes back to me to issue the permit through the city arborist. I think we've made a lot of good common ground. I think that there's some areas where there's some overreaching that's being done, and I'm not saying that in a critical manner. This is something we're going to have to meet more on. We've had one meeting so far with the committee. I've had one meeting so far, but I think that we're going to find some common ground on those. But I do believe we have to go back and revisit what was the purpose of establishing the tree committee and where those limitations are drawn. We can't have tree committee members going out to construction sites and shutting down jobs. First of all, there's litigation and liability involved. If a construction job is shut down, and as a result, that contractor is hit with penalties for delay in construction, then the city as a party to that could be a party to that liability involved. And I think that those are questions that we've got to iron out. I'm not being critical of the tree committee. I think they're very passionate about what they're trying to do. I think there's some confusion about the advisory capacity versus police authority, and we'll get through those as we continue to meet. I think that subdivisions should be removed from the tree regulations because it's just too massive a project to do. Developers do have the ability to work around some of the trees, but because of the limited profit that's made on a single-family subdivision versus, say, a casino project that has the means to excavate trees and replant them somewhere else, the limited profit from a single-family subdivision does not provide for that type of revenue coming in order to relocate fully grown oak trees. The more mature an oak tree is, the limited chance of survival that tree has. The tree committee has reduced one of their recommendations where they were actually recommending larger replacement trees, which are hard to find. And the larger a replacement tree, the less chance of survivability. And all of us have agreed to that during the meeting that we had. I think that the presentation tonight may have been a little premature because we were making some headway in meeting. We had a very good meeting and found a lot of common ground in that meeting. But I think that the presentation tonight was probably premature. That's not criticism, it's just a difference of opinion about the way that it was done. We have no problem with the tree committee coming back and giving the council quarterly reports. I think that probably we need to work a little closer together to make sure that we're all on the same page. I think we're getting there, but we haven't made it there yet. So with that, if you got any more questions, I'll be happy to answer.
I just want to wrap up my question. I'll be as brief as I can. So the majority of this council, when we were hearing from our citizens about development, there was concerns about, a perception, and perception's reality, that the new development was just going in and tearing down trees without any oversight or anybody caring about what happened. And the council was real sensitive about that, so talking with the administration and us, we created this advisory committee. We totally understand that. And I got great respect for the job that they do. They work so hard, probably harder than anyone needs to in a volunteer position. But they take it seriously, and the guidelines should be the LDO and what that says. And they should be able to create a report, and I do agree with you, they should not be going to a job site and talking with contractors and telling them what they should and shouldn't do. That's beyond their scope. And I don't know how much of that's been done. But they should be able to frame their report and tie it and reference it and footnote it back to the LDO or what's been specified to do or not do, and come back and say, this is our report. And then we have an obligation to look at that, and if it is correct, we should take the appropriate action. And so hopefully that's what I'm hearing. There's some coalescing coming together, but we're still a little bit apart in areas, and hopefully we can make make progress, so we're on the right track. And that concludes my questioning,
All right,
Mr.
thank you, Mr. Cliven. Any, Dr. Tisdale?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I appreciate your comments, Jerry and Brian. Thank you for reading that. Carol, thank you for, putting all that together. Just a couple of observations. I think there's always going to be friction just because of the nature of the tree committee being advisory. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's always going to be some tension, I think, and I don't know that it's always a bad thing, but I would expect there to be some disagreements. One thing this has done, though, this has made this issue more transparent than it was in the past, and that was one of the goals that we wanted. And it's evident that the tree committee basically is tracking and verifying that things are occurring or perhaps not occurring, but somebody's tracking all that as part of accountability, which was another reason the committee was formed. And just in listening and reading the report, there's a need to close the feedback loop on the administrative side with the committee, because it looks like sometimes there's just no feedback or it's late feedback. But they're charged, as I recall, with making recommendations. That's what they're doing, and sometimes that creates a little tension. But I appreciate the fact that it's a comprehensive report. I look forward to hearing from them quarterly. And you had to start somewhere. Tonight's a good start, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lawrence?
Who has the authority to shut down a job site?
I do.
Just you?
Yes, sir. I do. If there's something that's out of compliance on a job, whether it's a safety issue or a tree issue, I have the authority to shut that job down.
So if they have a problem, they should come to you?
We do that, yes, sir. We do that as a last resort. Typically, it can be resolved with just me visiting the site to find out what the issues are, or even with Eric Nolan visiting the site in the case of something that may not be in compliance with a root protection on a tree or something like that. But that's where the authority is. Yes,
So
sir.
how many times does that happen? Have they actually went out there and tried to shut down one?
Well, no, actually what would normally happen is we'll get a report, say from the tree committee member to Eric Nolan, that there's a problem. Eric will go out there and visit it, and if there's something that has been stacked on, let's say, the root system or underneath the drip line, he'll go out there and tell the contractors, you're going to have to move this, and they'll move it, you know. So we've been able to handle it diplomatically.
Well, that's a good thing.
I think we've got past that perception in the beginning, that false perception in the beginning that the city was just allowing developers to go out there and clear cut property from property line to property line. That never happened. And in an advisory capacity, one of the things that the tree committee is supposed to do is to help us with recommendations to make sure that when we do have a development going in, let's use the Hyatt Place as an example, the Hyatt Place Hotel that was built. That was actually moved from one side of the property where it was originally designed over to the other side of the property to save as many trees as possible. And that's the purpose. That's what we're trying to achieve, is to move the development, the footprint of the development, to the best location on the property to save as many trees as possible. And that's what we've been working for.
I'm glad you didn't use the Quintin. That was a bad one.
Yes, sir.
That was a bad one.
Yeah.
The other question is on the subdivision, so I can go as a subdivision person and just clear cut everything.
No, and that's not what I was suggesting, Mr. Lawrence. My point is that when you're dealing with 30 acres of property and you're having to shape drainage to create a number of sites out there, you have equipment that has to go out there and shape that drainage. Not only that, you've got all this underground infrastructure that has to go in. And you can't zigzag that infrastructure, a sewer line or a water line, all the way through that property. You have to pick the locations which are usually along the right-of-ways for that underground infrastructure to go in. And just placing the infrastructure in itself demands the removal of a number of trees. Now, we talked about the Nature's Trail project, which came up earlier, and came to the agreement that, you know, as long as the buffer trees were left along the perimeter to create kind of a screen between this development and other developments, that would be something that would be common ground. But subdivisions, though, are such a massive development when they're going in, And we have so many that are not only under construction but are on the books right now that it's almost impossible to save every tree on a subdivision property. You're creating home sites out there, and that in itself demands the removal of some trees. Developers have been good to work with us about saving a lot of the mature trees because they see that as a selling point for the houses that they're going to have there. You know, nobody wants to go out and cut down a 100-year-old oak tree. You know, if that's something that's, I mean, the name of this subdivision is Nature's Trail. And so they tried to save as many of the larger trees as possible on there. But when you're running infrastructure and you're putting in streets and you're putting in roads and you're running underground sewer lines, it demands more trees come down. And we try to make sure that they bring down the worst trees of the lot. Sometimes they have to take down good trees, and that's why the mitigation clause is in there. We believe that 5 trees to 1 is excessive. We've heard the recommendation that we go to 3 trees to 1, and we can look at that. The developer in a single-family subdivision, as in the case of Nature's Trail, may not be able to mitigate on that particular site 3 trees to 1. But that's why the tree committee is charged with developing the alternative sites for reforestation, so that if the developer can't put the trees on that particular piece of property, and this happens a lot, is that we already have selected locations along Seal Avenue or along some other places where those trees can be donated and can be placed, you know, maybe on the city right away or in the cemeteries or in Hiller Park or somewhere like that. So,
Well, the subdivision that we developed always had water, sewer, and drainage before, so have you had that many problems with any other subdivision that we have developed?
well, no, sir, and again, the reason I said that is because under the previous ordinance before this tree ordinance was adopted, subdivisions were exempt. So it wasn't an issue until this was written. This tree ordinance was written, and that's when subdivisions were placed in there, and I believe that was a mistake to place.
So that's something we
subdivisions
need
in.
to address.
Yes, sir, it is. And we'll continue to work with the tree committee on recommendations. We have some changes that we'd like to recommend as well. But I think that we're having meetings now. Eric Nolan meets with them on a regular basis. And we don't always agree, but we do agree that
That's like
there's
me and
common
Fofo, we don't always agree either.
that we can find common ground. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Newman, you have anything? Mr. Debbie, anyone else, Mr. Barrett? No more questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Creel. Okay, we're gonna move right along. We're gonna move on to the council report. Mr. Lawrence?
Sir, I need to respond to a few things, although I think what I'm going to have to do is write a letter and research. First of all, we are following the land development ordinance and presenting this tonight, okay? And I'll go and find chapter and verse to show you, okay? We presented a report like this a year ago, as you may recall. It appears in the minutes of the city council meeting last February, where we presented it. There was no objection made at that time. We were doing it in conformity with the land development ordinance. It's one of our jobs. Okay? If anything that we've ever done has shut down a job site, then that's new information to me. I don't have the power to shut down a job site. Now, what I've been doing and what we do as ward representatives is we go around and we look for tree problems, all right? And we report to the city arborist when there are problems, okay? And he's supposed to follow up and do something to correct them. To my knowledge, that has never resulted in anything being shut down. It's very surprising that this has happened, okay? We're an advisory committee. We go and we make recommendations, and that's what we do. We make the recommendations. And according to the LDO, there have been a couple of cases where we've had to express conflict with a decision that was made, and we did it according to the land development ordinance. We prepare our objections, and we send it to Mr. Creel, who forwards it to the mayor, and he arbitrates. Okay, that's in the LDO. Can't quote chapter and verse, unfortunately. Okay. The thing that we mainly ask for is not so much conservation of trees, although it would be great if that happened. We'd really love to see more of our large live oaks especially conserved. What we ask for is mitigation. Every time we do a set of recommendations, we say that we need to mitigate for the trees that are lost. The current standard is in the land development ordinance. It's 3-to-1 right now, okay? It's 3-to-1. And that's what we ask for, and that's what we're asking for enforcement of, okay? It's not complicated, right? And I know that, you know, there's an idea of a spirit of compromise, but these are protected trees, and I would advocate that mitigation is already the compromise. If you're cutting, you know, a 500-year-old tree, it's a big compromise to mitigate for that. That's already the compromise. This is what we need to be pursuing. If we're not going to establish a policy where we're conserving more of the trees and requiring developments to maybe do more site-specific work and more careful and more considered site plans, then they need to do the mitigation. They need to do them. That's all we're asking for. And we have developed alternative sites already. We have a list of them. I know we forwarded them to all of y'all at one time or another. If you'd like, I can forward them again. They do exist. And then finally, I'd like to address the idea of how we're trying to police the city. Well, when we got started and we asked, you know, the city arbors, well, why isn't there more enforcement? Why don't y'all assess penalties against people who cut trees without permits? He said, the city arborist said, we don't have anybody to help us. It's just too much. We can't do it all. So what we did was we set up our windshield surveys. And this is where we go out and we look to see, have there been any, you know, tree violations? And we do this, we report it to the city arborist so he knows, okay? And I've had a couple of incidents where, you know, I had photographs of, you know, trees being cut without a permit. I had the photographs, I saw them, I sent them to the city arborist, and I suggested that we assess penalties, okay? And his response to me was, well, you have to do an affidavit. You know, you can't. Basically, he tried to find reasons not to do it, okay? And we all decided that, okay, maybe there's not enough public awareness, okay? So we backed off on trying to get enforcement and trying to get penalties assessed, okay? And we decided, okay, this year we'll do a public education plan, okay? We'll try and get the word out the best we can. We haven't gotten started with that yet. I mean, we've just gotten finished with our LDO revisions. So we're going to go forward with this, okay? And use B-mail and BTV if it ever happens and all that to get the word out, hopefully get it in the Sun Herald and make people aware of what their obligations are under our tree ordinance. So in response to the suggestion that there has been any overreaching, I would have to say we're trying to support the Planning Commission. I mean, we're trying to help you get the ordinance enforced. That's all we've ever tried to do is get the ordinance enforced. And what I can do is go through, if you want, go through this and go find chapter and verse in the LDO, and I'll do it to show you that this is what we're trying to do, okay, to the extent that I can. I don't have any more comments. Thanks. I'll be back in touch with y'all.
Okay. Ms. Campbell, I think you don't have anything. Anyone have any questions for her?
My only comment would be there's a representative from each ward. You receive absolutely zero in terms of payment for anything. You meet, you expend your time and energy, from what you said, just to be sure that the ordinances are enforced.
Yes, sir.
That's all.
Yes, sir. I go out on my time, in my car, on my bike, going
Right.
around
And-
my
and-
ward.
And the other committee members do that as well.
I have to assume they do, because
Sure.
every meeting we discuss what we find, okay? And we discuss whatever follow-up, we've been able to do. Any other questions?
Oh, that's all. Thank you.
And I have one. You think if we publish some of the things in the B-mail, like some of the problems that we may have, like the penalties, saying that if you cut your trees, you think that would help?
Right, yeah. What we want to do is publicize that, what the obligations are. We want to let everybody know we're not assessing penalties right now. And we have to hash out what those penalties are going to be, because that's one of the things we've been talking to Mr. Creel and Eric about, okay? But we want to make sure that there's a media blitz, everybody knows, because, if there's a lack of awareness, and there may be a genuine lack of awareness, we don't want to, clobber somebody with penalties.
Start
We
with
don't want to,
awareness.
right, that's just going to make them hate trees. We don't want to do that, okay?
That designates cities to be a tree city. Are we designated as a tree city currently?
I think
That
we
is
are.
a very important designation. We do not want to lose that. That is very, very distinguishable, accomplishment, and we want to hold on to that. And I think this is part of the process. It may be painful, but we can find a balance, Mr. Mayor.
Well, conservation of trees has been, it's a Biloxi value that goes back 100 or more years, okay? It's just, if people identify so closely with the trees here, and I understand that we need development, but we have to look at, I just feel like we have to do a better job of getting more trees preserved. Good development that includes trees, and let's make the mitigation happen.
I think, Mr. President,
Okay,
I would
Mayor.
like to say we're all after the same goal. That's part of our beauty, and that's part of our heritage. And, we're going to be reasonable and aggressive when it needs to be. So, that's the reason for, I think, these, in the LDO, we need to take a harder look at what could be more helpful we're after the same goal. So I know there'll be, just like any family, there'll be rubs, and we'll work those out.
Yeah, Brian Lamar just posted a promotional video in a Ward 7 Facebook page for Biloxi, and it was all about trees. There were trees everywhere in the video. It's different, cross-cutting to different, parts of Biloxi and different parts of the coast, and it was all trees. Okay, all right, that's all, thanks.
George and I used to play in trees, right?
George planted some trees with George Washington, didn't you? Thank you, Ms. Campbell. We appreciate it. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on to our council report, and I'm gonna start with Mr. Barrett on the corner.
Yeah, I just have a couple things. We had our ribbon cutting for our library and Wool Market on, I believe it was Friday morning, and had a great turnout. What's that? Friday morning, 10 a.m. Yeah, George stayed out all night so he wouldn't oversleep, so he could make it. But we had a great turnout. I'm excited about that, as well as the future of that building, what's going to be going with that. Also, I thought I saw Walt earlier. Christy may be able to answer this. The new water sewer lines that are going in on Oak Lawn Road, the FEMA project, I have some residents just calling, because in the morning sometimes that's a 20-minute wait because they've got it down to one lane, asking how long that's going to be. Do y'all know how long? Not the whole project, but just there on Oak Lawn Road. The project in Eagle Point, or Oak Lawn Road, the FEMA project, have people calling asking, because they do have part of Oak Lawn Road shut down to one lane when they're working, and not the whole project, but just, do you know how long they'll be on Oak Lawn and have that shut down? Yeah, they're doing a good job. It's just in the morning sometimes that you're having to wait a good while to get through there. So they just have asking that. And then third thing is, I believe that they're finishing up the paving in Larkin subdivision. When will, have we taken control of that water? We still don't, they haven't turned it over? Okay, all right. All right, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Mr. Glavin.
Yeah, I want to just commend one of the contractors that was doing some of the dredging out in North Haven. J.E. Voorhees, I think, had that contract. I've spent some time with several of the residents that are in and around that area. They seem to be very pleased on the progress and even how far in the canal that they were able to dredge and get them access to the water. That's a major accomplishment. Hasn't been done in 30 years. And so hats off to the administration finding the money, Christie, and getting that project done. Hopefully we can earmark some more for some of the other canals in that area. But that's a big accomplishment. One of the other things I just want to follow up on, is Sherry Bell here? I didn't see her tonight, but Mike, maybe you can kind of speak to this. So there's some questions again. I mean, I know we've talked about it in some of these meetings, but the lighting at the tennis courts, I know there's a couple of plans that we can go. I don't know if there's any grant money available and/or, you know, a bond somewhere out there that we can get earmark a little money, or maybe there's a service contract that's about to be terminated or expire or something like that. Maybe we can kind of reposition some of those funds for that. But we're getting more tournaments, we're getting more interest out there, and the lighting is poor, you know.
You're right, Councilman, we do have quotes to do several different, more lights.
It's just like dig once, do it once, and, you know, make sure it's, okay. And then related to that, out at the Sportsplex area, I think there was some ditch clearing. Did we get that resolved? And I think Billy Ray was on that. I don't know if that's been resolved of that project. Maybe I can follow up later. He's on it? Okay. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gavin. Dr. Tisdale.
Yes, I'd like to start a rumor, but I need just a little bit of information that's accurate enough to make it feasible that it might be true. Howard Avenue downtown.
Soon.
I'm listening carefully for a date.
There you go.
So February 8th? I could go with that, huh? Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tisdale. Mr. Deming.
I don't have much. The couple things that I had concerns with are with Public Works and Parks and Recs, and neither are here tonight, so I'll reach out to them tomorrow. I know Billy said that he gave you some locations when you guys scouted Le Bon Terre.
I've got those locations for you, Councilman, and I sent you today a draft of a resolution that we also sent to the county about doing their share.
Right.
I think that's going to happen.
Okay, great. Good news. I appreciate it. And Kenny, I've got some underground football, flag football leagues that we're talking about creating a league on Sunday at Pops Ferry Fields. Now, those fields are in horrible shape, and I'm working with Miss Bell and the county to redress them. I don't know if you'd work with me and the administration to try to move them over to the Sportsplex. I'll get in touch with you tomorrow about it.
Thank you, Ms. Newman. And Mr. Lawrence.
Friday morning is bright early. 10 o'clock in the morning is pretty early for me. But we was there. You know what's exciting about that? They have that little class of kids do the Pledge of Allegiance in their library. Those kids are going to grow up with that. You old people like you, Popo, it's too long, too late for you. But they will enjoy that the rest of their lives. That's good fuzz. And when you extend that and make the community center, that'd be just part of their community. That's not but a good thing. So to be out there with the kids, to be excited like that, that was pretty good. We had a ribbon cutting on 131 across the street upstairs. You know, we had a little problem with that building there, but now the Boltons are doing a good job, and they're going to rent it out, book it for parties, and reunions and stuff like that, but it'll be a good thing for downtown Biloxi. And as far as the Tisdale, now, according to the paper, the Clydesdale is supposed to be walking downtown. See, so you need to explain that to them, because everybody think they're coming downtown in the middle of the street. So they're not. So where the Clydesdale's going, and how they going to get to City Hall? Do what? But have y'all told the rest of the world? Because nobody seems to know that. Who? Oh, that's why I don't know the Facebook stuff. So that's no wonder I didn't find out anything about that. Have you ever report back on the convention center? These people are supposed to bring a report down on the point.
Still in process, and they visited the various sites. The group from CSL was here this past week.
Yeah, because I was just wondering. It's been a while. I thought maybe you might have got something back from them to see what's going on.
Still looking at the March time frame for reporting that.
Okay, that's it pretty much. Thank you.
All right. And I have, real quick, a couple of things. Congratulations, Southland. You guys going to do your groundbreaking tomorrow, so congratulations on that. Walt, look like they're starting to close out some roads for us, so that's starting to look pretty good on the east side of Biloxi. I think, is Division Street getting ready to come? Look, I saw them working there like they were getting ready to pave. Okay, great. Thank you. And that concludes my report. Okay, we're going to move on to our public agenda, citizen comments. 3 minutes per person, a total of 45 minutes. Would anyone on my left would like to come up and speak? Anyone on my left? Come on up. Please sign in, sign your name, address, and also state your name and address for the record so it can be on the record.
My name is Ronald Jean McClellan. I live at 636 Walker Street in Biloxi. My complaint is my vehicle is constantly getting torn up. I have brought 2 sets of tires. I have had my car realigned. I have brought all the receipts to Oscar Reynolds, to the insurance company, and to the city of Biloxi, and I haven't received no information about when is my vehicle going to be taken care of. And then in front of my yard, during the time when they was digging in my yard, they told me they tore up my yard. And then they was putting rocks in my yard to keep me from getting stuck in the yard. And 2 of my windows on my vehicle is destroyed because of me trying to trim my grass. Little bitty pieces of rock hit the car and tore my side window up and tore my back window. That's my comment. That's my complaint. I haven't received no answer. I got a letter from Oscar Reynolds, but the letter saying that they're not going to take care of me. And Biloxi has my information. Oscar Reynolds has information, and they constantly keep ducking and dodging me, telling me they're going to get in touch with me, but never do. And it's been going on for the ever since 2017. And this is going on 2019. I haven't received any information. And it's getting tiresome.
Was that it?
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not a question and answer, but we heard your comments, so thank you, Mr. James. Anyone else on my left?
Hi, my name is Ronnie Dupuy. This is in reference to the zoning amendment. My wife, Christina, and I own a unit at Oak Shores. I think it's important to mention that we bought real estate here in Biloxi in 2016 because we had an incredible experience actually staying in Oak Shores as guests in a short-term vacation rental ourselves. Our host was an incredible ambassador for Biloxi. We purchased a unit at Oak Shores later that year as a place to spend time enjoying the Gulf Coast, but also intended it to be self-sufficient as a vacation rental. Over the past 2 years, our experience has been remarkable. We've welcomed families from around the United States and several other countries. We've helped military members who are in town for training have a comfortable place to stay without a long-term lease, and our family has enjoyed it immensely. We don't believe that our experience is unique among the home-sharing community. We believe that vacation rentals are the future of tourism in our area and in the world. We believe that short-term vacation rentals are both proper and beneficial in areas that make the most sense, in places such as Oak Shores. It allows others to come and enjoy the Gulf Coast in a welcoming, home-style atmosphere. In the past 2 years at our singular unit, we've welcomed over 100 guests who've actively sought out short-term rentals in our area. The trend for travelers desiring short-term rentals is rising every year, and that number is multiplied many times over in places like Oak Shores and the entire Gulf Coast. Our guests ate at local restaurants, went to local tourist attractions, enjoyed festivals, concerts, bought local groceries, souvenirs, and entertained their children, all while generously moving their money into our local economy and paying local taxes. As for ourselves, from day one of local ownership, we've engaged the city, county, and state to make sure that our collecting and remitting of taxes has been accurate and timely. We take our commitment to our community very seriously. I would encourage the council to not only look at Oak Shores, but to look in the future to other communities like ours. The number of applications for short-term rental permits that have been submitted from Oak Shores indicates a strong desire by our community to operate within reasonable guidelines. A vote towards rezoning this area for this use will allow our community to take a step into the future of the hospitality industry and our residents to use their homes and property to welcome many more tax-paying guests to our area. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up, sir.
Hello, my name is Jim York, 1664 Beach Boulevard. I'm here to speak in favor of getting our property rezoned to CB and it hopefully set up a path for short-term rentals. I just kind of want to say this, is that there's a number of folks in this room here that have a firm belief and would love to see that happen. Part of the problem is a lot of these people won't get up here in front of this table and say anything because they have the fear of whatever to say anything. So if I could just acknowledge and have maybe the people behind me stand up that's in favor of short-term rental, I'd appreciate it. The other thing I want to say is I had purchased a condo at Oak Shores pre-Katrina, and I've purchased a few additional ones after the mass had happened. I have a love for the city of Biloxi, and I'm a walking advertisement. I love to talk about Biloxi, talk about the fun things to do, and I really have a warm belief for this city. Over time, I've seen Biloxi evolve as a city itself, and I also know people who are staying in places are evolving too, because maybe the perfect fit isn't a hotel for them anymore. It may be something that they need that's a little bit different. It may be a kitchen to cook some food in. It may be square footage where they can walk around a little bit more and not be kind of curtained to a hotel room, especially if they have children. It may be a patio to barbecue on. It may be a TV where mom and dad can watch one channel, or maybe dad just watch the sports channel and the kids watch Nickelodeon. It could be more than one bathroom. When you're getting ready to go out to eat for dinner, I mean, it's nice to have two bathrooms to get together and to get yourself done up for dinner. Playground on the property, more than one pool. They want to feel like it's a second home. Those are the things that we offer with the short-term rentals at Oak Shores. I just want to share this with you. There was a lady that called me in November. Her name was Miss Matson out of Columbus, Ohio. And she said to me, she says, you know, I need a condo with a big refrigerator and a big oven. I said, what for? She says, it's simple. I'm coming down on Thanksgiving. I haven't seen my son in 6 months. He's stationed at Keesler, and I'm going to cook him the biggest Thanksgiving dinner there is. And to me, those are the special things that take place that make us feel good with what we do. I would like just for you folks to understand, we're not trying to take any business away from the hotels. We want to become part of that community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. York. Anyone else on my left? Come on up. Sorry. Down the middle.
Charlie Morrow. I'm at 1664 Beach Boulevard also. In my background, I'm a retired assistant commander for the New Orleans Police Department. And before I bought the unit over here, I did investigation actually with the police department in Biloxi. And I asked them about my first condo I had was actually in Gulfport at the Legacy Villa. And they said they'd never heard of it. They'd never been back there. There's been no problems. And then I said, I checked with the Biloxi Police Department, and I asked them about Oak Shores. They said prior to when I bought the unit, they've been back there numerous times for drugs, fights, and whatever. And ever since I bought the unit, the crime rate has really dropped almost nothing back there. The management, and they got rid of subchapter 8 over there, and that the quality of living back there is much, much better. My unit is rented mostly to military people, and they really can't stay in the casinos. So we're privileged in having our units that we can rent to the military people at a greatly reduced rate, and they bring a lot of taxes and everything to the city of Biloxi. I ask that you all consider Airbnb or short-term rentals for these units. It's a pleasure. When both my units are empty, I prefer to stay at Oak Shores. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Anyone else to my right? Come on up. Okay, young lady up in the middle.
Good evening. My name is Marie Abbott, and I am a renter at Oak Shores. I've been there approximately 4 years, and I've seen, I just see what goes on in the neighborhood. I'm there a lot, and I have no problem with rentals. It brings people in the community. People from all over the country get to come to Biloxi. It's like you picked Biloxi from Europe. I mean, how'd you find us? You know, ask those questions. And then, we send them out to the casinos. There's always a map and some, all kinds of stuff to send them out, where to go and how to get there, even down to Uber. Call Uber, they'll come get you. I just like to say the management company there is quite strict as well. And with the involvement of the rental community is now monitored pretty closely through the agencies, Airbnb, and all the Trip Advisor and all that. You have to give an ID, and as much safer now than it's ever been. So as far as getting quality people in, qualified people, they're qualified when they come, or they don't get accepted. So there's those safety factors in people that are applying to rent short term. So I would like you very much to consider our request to rezone, and I am a happy Oak Shores resident. When I moved back to Biloxi after being gone for about 2 years, I knew exactly where I wanted to live, and I've been there ever since. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else anyone else to my right?
Good evening. My name is William Kerr. My wife and I own a unit at Oak Shores. We live there part-time. We are involved in the short-term rental affair. I think most of the folks who spoke before me have covered a lot of the points. I would just like to add that we're respectful of the issues before the council and the difficulty in deciding some of these things. There's sometimes not a perfectly clear answer. Oak Shores, I think one of the most convincing cases perhaps for some of the things we're saying is if you were a resident of Biloxi or had seen that unit several years ago, seen that complex, and you see it now, there's a remarkable difference. And that, I think, is due to several factors. One of them is the HOA there is strong. The property manager she runs a tight ship. And for all residents, whether you're an owner or resident or what have you, the property's well taken care of. It has new roofs, new paint. It's now gated. And the influx of the funds that have made that available are in large measure due to the short-term rental interest, if you will, or owners. And not all of us as short-term rental owners, if you want to call us that, do that all the time. It happens occasionally with some people, some more than others. The rental requirements for people to get into one of these units, when I first heard about short-term rental, you have this, some people might have the vision of college kids drinking, having parties, and people who live there full-time pay the consequences of that. But there's a pretty strong vetting process that goes into play before they're allowed to book any of these rentals. If they have been an unsatisfactory client in the past, they will not be allowed to be booked again. There's some has been made of the difference between a long-term rental and a short-term rental, and I think the inference in a lot of those cases is that a longer-term rental will provide better renters. It's been my experience that that's not necessarily the case. Some of our worst experiences over years and years of renting have been with folks that had standard 6-month or 1-year leases. I would also say that some of the residents who have voiced concerns about some problems that they may have had with short-term rentals, I respect their opinions. This is what America's supposed to be about. We express our opinions and lay out our cases, and people like you have to make the final decision on those things.
Sir, I'm sorry, your time is up.
So I thank you for your time, and I appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to come up?
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to talk this evening. My name is Dennis Smith, 1664 Beach Boulevard, and I'm in favor of short-term renting there and the zoning change. We have commercial property on both sides of us and the most beautiful beach in Mississippi in front of us. It brings a lot of tourists here Some of them will not stay in a hotel. They will go back where they came from. They come from Pensacola, all across Florida, a lot of further to the west of us here. And once they come and stay in Biloxi, they want to come back. In Biloxi, because it's a twofold city, it's a regular thriving city, and then it's got the beach with all of the tourist attractions. Because of that, Destin can't touch that. They roll up the sidewalks in the winter. We have year-round activities here that the citizens enjoy and the tourists enjoy. The people who stay in our condos short-term, they leave behind tickets from all of the malls, Walmart, and all the shopping centers in the area. A lot of commerce comes from that. And they want a yard to barbecue in. They need the space, and they're not subject to stay in a hotel. They'll just go stay in Florida if they can't stay here. So we screen our people. No one just comes there. We monitor how many people they're bringing with them. We want to know what their intentions are. We have the right to turn them down, and we do turn some down. The people that come there are well behaved, and the people who stay there on long-term rent, we love them. They love us. We get along great. They like the guests that come. We're excited about being able to do this, and we hope that you let us go ahead and get this zoning change. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any questions?
All right, just-
Thank y'all.
Okay, did I leave anyone out? Anyone out who wants to speak? Okay, with that being said, we're going to move on. That'll close out our citizen comments. We're going to move on to our policy agenda. Ordinance, first reading. Lucy?
Ordinance to approve a zoning map amendment to authorize a change in zoning for 2 parcels of land from RM 30 high-density multifamily residential to CB community business for properties collectively identified as 1664 Beach Boulevard.
I'm moving, and I'd like to ask Peter a couple questions on this move.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Lawrence.
I'll second it for discussion
by-
purposes. I know it is.
Yeah. Second by Dr. Tisdale. Now, this is the first reading.
I know, but this needs to be brought up right now. They got in the planning commission denied it, but yet they charged them to go back to have a public hearing. So why is this on the table to deny it if you're getting ready to have a public hearing from the planning commission?
It's on to prove it.
There's
It's on to
alternate.
approve it.
No. The first reading is not to approve it. Says it right, all you do is read what it said.
And there are alternate, there's alternate resolutions.
Recommend denial with respect to
Yeah.
the number of individual applications right here.
Okay.
Says right there, denial.
That's on December the 18th.
Right.
Recommend and respect.
What does it say? It says denial. There's nothing about approval.
3 options.
Then they said they would stand the charge to the planning staff to prepare an application for a full public hearing.
To rezone.
So you got two different things that you got.
Yeah.
One denied, one said extend it and have a public hearing. So we hadn't had the public hearing, so where we at with this?
I think they
Creel.
denied the short-term rental, and they recommended the rezoning to commercial.
The zoning is what we
And
open
then they
for.
could go back, and then if it goes commercial, then they automatically can
When they
do
came,
short-term
right, when they
rentals.
came in originally, they were under the RM30 zoning. So there were a number of applications for conditional use approval under the RM30 zonings. Well, there were so many applications to change that from a planning standpoint, it triggered more of a zoning change request to go to commercial than it did to have so many there as conditional use. So the planning commission denied the conditional use applications, and told him to go back and reapply for a zoning change to go to CB, which allows, currently allows short-term rental as a use by right.
So are they gonna have the public hearing, or where we going with that?
Well, no, there's still gonna be a public hearing. You know, last week when we discussed this, I had suggested to you that, some of the planning commission members had felt that we needed to hold up on this until after the public hearing. And we did meet with 6 of the planning commission members a week ago Friday. And after a lengthy discussion, we were trying to set up the public hearing to consider additional rules for short-term rental, some unanswered questions, you know, that needed to be answered. And we thought that we'd come out of there with a specific date for the public hearing before the planning commission. But Mr. Washer asked that he wanted to, instead of us just discussing it with 6, he wanted us to have an executive committee meeting with all of the planning commission members to discuss possible recommendations to changes before we set the date for the public hearing. So the planning commission is aware they need to conduct a public hearing. But I would imagine this Thursday at this planning commission meeting, there'll be discussion about the executive committee meeting to go for that. Now, having said that, let me just tell you this. What's on the agenda today is a zoning change. And irrelevant of short-term rental, this is a zoning change, so the considerations you have to make are, was there a mistake in the original zoning? Is there a public need, or has there been a change in the character of the neighborhood? It's not about short-term rental. It's about whether or not you believe one of those 3 conditions exist. It's only a zoning change case at this point. So can an argument be made that there's been a change in the character of the neighborhood? You can look at the surrounding zoning, and it's got CB zoning on both sides of it. Does have some NB on their neighborhood business, but it does meet some of the planning criteria for a zoning change. There's also an application for a zoning change for the townhomes that face Irish Hill that's going to be asking for the same thing to go from multifamily residential to commercial business. So under state law, in considering a change in zoning, those are the 3 criteria that y'all have to consider. You don't use short-term rental as the argument for a zoning change. You use one of those 3 criteria that I just mentioned.
So we set up right, is this a legal problem?
Well, it's something that needs more discussion, and that's the reason that we believe the Planning Commission needs to take into consideration these things before you make a recommendation on this. You know, we can't tell the City Council what to do. We can request it, but we believe that there are some considerations that you need to entertain. One of the things that I'd recommended, had mentioned at the last meeting, was that we believe that one of the recommendations we'll make to the Planning Commission is that all short-term rentals need to be conditional use. That in whatever the situation is that we need to have a record of who comes in and gets a license and who doesn't, and conditional use is one of those considerations. That way our code enforcement guys, when we get a complaint about somebody operating short-term rental, we already have the inventory in our office about who's been approved and who hasn't been approved, so we can go out there with that knowledge before we even knock on the door of the house or the unit to see if they have a conditional use approval, rather than a use by right. In a situation where you allow short-term rental as a use by right, we're not going to get the reports in our office that someone is operating illegally, because probably a number of the unit owners are operating without a license. And as was displayed at the Planning Commission meeting and here, when the question was asked, how many people in here are operating short-term rentals? And a number of people in the audience raised their hand. Well, how many of you have licenses? And no hands went up. So you have a number of unit owners that are operating under the radar, and that's what we're trying to get a handle on, is how many people are licensed and how many people are not licensed. We want to make sure that all of them are licensed. Now, the people who answered that question expressed a willingness to get a license, to come in and get a license once the zoning was correct or once the conditional use was approved, but we need to hold them to that and make sure that there's something in the review process that gives us some enforcement capability, to make sure that they're getting the license that they need to operate.
Well, should this be tabled until you get some of this stuff straight?
That would be
trying to tell these people that they got this, they don't have it, then you're going to change it.
Yes, sir.
So let's do it right the first time.
That would be my recommendation. Is that the council table this until after the public hearing before the Planning Commission. Had the apartments been an issue before the last public hearing that was held, we would have probably already had these questions answered. But what happened is that the stack of applications for apartments was not presented until after the public hearing was held to reconsider single-family residential, and that's why this has become an issue now.
For the record, real quick, this is the first reading, and it's already been moved and it's been second.
You can table it, easy. That's right. I'd rather table it and get it all right the first time.
Then you guys have to withdraw.
That's fine. No problem.
Okay, have you withdrew yours?
We shouldn't even be discussion.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Move the table.
Move the table.
We can
I'll
table
second
it
it.
next week.
Okay.
Subject to call from the public hearing.
Yeah,
I
Dr. Tisdale. Okay, any questions? Go ahead.
Jerry, what's the process here? Because if the planning commission chose to put it on the table today, why did they choose to put it in front of us now? When you talked they talked about public hearings and things, but instead they chose to bring it before us today.
We were asked to come up with some recommendations as to how to regulate this.
So why, instead of doing that, did you guys bring this to us today?
That was my question too.
It was on the schedule to come today. We can't make that decision in our department to hold up a case that has planning commission approval. That's something that y'all have to do. The staff doesn't have the authority to do that.
Okay, so I just want to reiterate what you said. You don't have the authority to hold up something that already has planning commission approval. So this has been approved by the planning commission and it's coming before us today. And you're asking us not to go along with the recommendations of the planning commission to approve this.
Well, actually, after the meeting with the 6 planning commission members a week ago, some expressed concerns that this needs to be held up until
Mr.
after.
President, I think we're out of order.
Yeah.
We got a ordinance, and the protocol is you get a second and a first and a second. That's it. We can always table it next week when it comes up for the second reading if that's what we choose to do.
I agree with you on that. However, they moved, we got another, it was moved to a table and second. And we're in the middle of the discussion in that area right there.
Right.
So they were talking about holding it up.
Shouldn't be any discussion on ordinance.
I had another question to ask. How come you guys didn't pull it back or pull it back if there was concern? If they already decided to move it forward with the community bids to turn it into CB, and then they had concern, why didn't they pull it back? Why did they move forward with it?
Because there was not a majority of the planning commission members present at that meeting, that discussion meeting. There were only 6 there, and there are 15 planning commission members. So it would have taken a majority vote, and that wasn't even in a setting where they could vote on it. But the chairman, because of all the questions that have come up, the chairman said, I'm hoping that the council will table this until after we have the public hearing so that we can then discuss what revisions we need to make to the ordinance to make this work.
Okay. I'm satisfied. I believe, and just my belief is we should send it back to the planning commission. That was my plan, but I'm gonna go ahead and, since it was moved and it was second on tabling it, I'm gonna carry that forward. But my recommendation would have been to send it back to the planning commission and have them to rethink it. But okay. I understand, but it was also moved on top of it to table it afterwards. Mr. Demme?
I don't know if you're calling me to finish my line of questioning that I was interrupted on, or if you're calling me to respond on whether we're out of order or not.
Finish all your,
Take your best shot.
Yeah.
Well, while I agree with Kenny, I do think that this is out of order. However, the motion has been moved, and if there's going to be action taken, I'm not going to sit idly by and allow action to be taken without making my position known. Well, they're going to table it if we don't act.
It's basically tabled to the next week when it comes up for the second reading.
Yes, I know this. There's a motion to table it, and what happens after you motion to table it, you ask, how long do you want to table it for? So that's why we need to discuss this. If we're going to table this for some period that extends next week, what's that?
That's what the table to.
It was moved by Mr. Lawrence and second by Dr. Tisdale. So we can vote on it and then move forward.
Apparently, it's irrelevant if you vote on it anyway, because it's subject to call, so it'll just be called next week, whether we table it or not. Doesn't matter.
There's a motion on the floor now, and I want to just go ahead and carry it on out.
I'll just ask these questions next week.
Okay. All in favor to table it? Okay, Dr. Tisdale, 1, 2. All against? 1, 2, 3. And I guess you guys abstain from it, so that's it. So that's it.
I feel we're out of order because I'm abstaining on the basis that we're out of order. This is a first reading. It was motion and seconded, and that's it.
It
We
failed
don't
any,
talk- There's a quiet period.
Councilman
There's a quiet
Glavin,
period
it
until
failed
next week.
anyway, so we're moving on to B. Lucy?
Yeah.
So be on next week.
We're not out of order. That's the first thing. I have to correct something there. You're not out of order. We can table.
No, we've moved on to B.
I'm
We've
talking
moved
about-
on to B.
I'm talking about
You're
something
out
else.
of order now, Councilman.
We're out of order. Come on now.
You can
Don't
table
make me use.
anything anytime you want.
Don't make me use the gavel.
Go ahead and use
B, Lucy.
Ordinance to approve a zoning map amendment to authorize a change in zoning for a parcel of land from its current zoning of RM30, high-density multifamily residential, to LB limited business for property identified as 308 Santini Street.
That was moved by myself and second by Mr. Lawrence. I have no issue with that. Mr. Lawrence, you have any questions on it?
No questions on that.
None. Anyone else?
Yeah, I do. I just appreciate the president and councilman for last week. You moved it and seconded it, quiet period until we could get more details and then vote on it today. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we're gonna go ahead and vote on it. All in favor? Okay. You in too? Okay. 7-0. Ordinance B carries. Consent agenda. I need a motion on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Tisdale, second by Ms. Newman. George, we're gonna start with you.
Yeah, and that's 5J. It talked about the Point Cadet electrical, 200-something thousand, 228,000. But yet, when you get down to section 3, it says it's part of Keesler Gate Project 1043. So what did Keesler Gate got to do with that at all? Well, then you can't put that on it like that. You can't write the resolution wrong. You got to correct that. So you either pull it off, put it back on next week, corrected.
Entertain a motion.
When it is.
something that have to be?
Take out that one line that says, it was obviously left in there. It says attached here to is Exhibit C for Keesler Gate Project number 1043. If we just strike that, we're clean.
Is that something that have to be passed today?
Depends on when you want the electrical work done to start at Point Cadet. It'll be 2 more weeks.
I didn't do it wrong. I just knew there was some problem there when you plop two different projects in it.
What's the project number?
What is the project number?
Okay.
And the name of the project?
Got it right here.
Okay.
Request a scrivener's error correction. The project number is correct. It is 1043. On the top line of the second page, instead of the Keesler Gate project, change the words Keesler Gate project to Point Cadet electrical upgrade. Point Cadet Marina electrical upgrade.
Okay. Okay. Anyone wanna move that amendment? And have it read? Peter, could you read it into the read it into the minutes, and then we can move and second it?
All right, at the top of the second page, we're going to strike the words Keesler Gate project, and we're going to replace it with the Point Cadet Marina electric upgrades. Project number 1043 remains the same.
Okay, I need a motion to amend it. Okay.
I'll move to amend it as the foregoing language presented by Mr. Abide.
Okay, I need a second. Second by Mr. Lawrence. Any questions? All in favor? Okay, 7-0. Motion carries. Now we need to bring it back to the, okay, I need to move to add it back to the agenda. Just go ahead, dump it in there, gotcha. Okay, George, let's roll. That's it? Oh, Ms. Newman? Mr. Dimon?
Nothing else,
Nothing?
On item E, we're paying $12,000 for 3 signs, but I don't know what they say or what they're for or where they're any clues. I'm just curious. So maybe they'll be at each end of Howard Avenue saying the opening is. And if you don't know, we don't know. But if you tell me we need $4,000 signs, we need 3 of them. Just curious. There you go. I'm done, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Glavin? Mr. Barrett? Oh, and I have nothing. All right, all in favor of the consent agenda? Oh, 7-0, motion carries. Ruth? Okay, yeah, exceptions. Any exceptions? Mr. Deming? Foxtrot and golf, F and G. He has F and G that he's going against. F and G. Foxtrot and golf. Okay, no other exceptions? All right, we're going to move on to routine agenda 7. I need
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Dr. Tisdale. He moved it. Second by?
Second.
Mr. Glavin. George, you have any comments?
Yeah, we got both our money people here today. What we got? What the good news this week? So you got some in the pipeline, just nothing. All right, thank you.
Okay, anyone have any other questions? All in favor? 7-0. Motion carried. Need a motion to recess.
So moved.
Dr. Tisdale. Anyone want a second? Second by Ms. Newman. Any questions? All in favor? 7-0.